Blog Talk Radio.
You're quite hostile.
I got a right to be hostile, man. My people been persecuted.
Yes, I'm black. I'm proud of it. I'm black and beautiful.
Get into it.
Revolution is not the best, it's a process.
I want the truth.
We have to dare to be different and dare to tell the truth.
We don't see the fire, but the house is burning.
Pick up a book and feed your mind.
Took over.
How will the people say? You are a deceived people. Nobody else can do this for us.
Take that white Jesus down.
Something is wrong.
Do the research like we do the research. You'll be convinced also.
Turn off Fake Housewives of Atlanta.
Continue to raise the intellect and the consciousness of the human family.
Professor Griff knows.
Yo, I ain't no coach.
I don't know what just happened.
You see, I didn't even touch the computer.
I don't know. Well, we just got to roll the punches. All right, this is NMEMINDZ Radio on the Minds Matter Blog Talk Radio Network. All right, where matters of the mind matter. Greetings, family. Peace. Hotep. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Abidia Fodie. I'm not going to let me serve my groove. Black Power. What's popping? What's good? What it do? Good evening. And as Pam Africa says, on the move. Welcome to another edition of NMEMINDZ Radio with your host, Professor Griff, and my big sister, Ms. ZaZa Ali.
Peace to you, sir.
Peace
My
to
good
you.
brother,
All
as
right.
you always say.
All
Peace
right.
to the gods and goddesses, the Pan-African family, the Rastafari. Peace to the Black nationalists, the Moors, the Hebrew Israelites, the Native Americans, the Latino family, African Latino family, and the original family covering every 196,940,000 square miles of the planet Earth. And I'm going to need to add, well, I know there's a lot of people I'm leaving out, but, you know, Z Ali listens to the show. The original Indian, quote unquote, you know, I don't know which tribe he's from, but the Dravidian, you know,
all right.
The black people of India.
Shout out to Z Ali doing the damn thing. And Mother.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, this is the show where minds produce minds that produce minds that produce great minds because minds matter. We are souls in search of souls that are like minds, like minds. This show and every show is dedicated to all those that are dedicated, as taught to us by our good brother, Dr. Reverend Phil Valentine.
That's right, and Sister Amy Garvey taught us to stand on our own 2 feet and fight like hell for our place in this world.
Definitely standing on the verge of getting it on to bring about a revolution of the mind, that is, because revolution is complete, constructive, conscious, cosmic change, as taught to us by our good brother, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad.
Revolution is also when women give birth to men, spiritual, emotional, and mental revolution. It is through the womb that man perfects himself, and it is through love that man is truly transformed.
You can be whatever you want to be in this world's life on your way to becoming gods and goddesses, having a human experience called you, as taught to us by Professor James Small.
That's right, and we were also taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that to find God we must look within. Heaven and hell is a state of mind, not an actual physical place, brothers and sisters. We build minds and hold truth or falsehood, destroying and rebuilding.
Once again, this is NMEMINDZ Radio on your Minds Matter. Blog Talk Radio Network, where matters of the mind matter. Our aim and our mission
is to raise a vibrational pitch of our thinking into the mind of the Creator, as taught to us by Kaneda Muhammad.
And also the consciousness level of the human family, and replace racism and white supremacy, so that we, to raise the conscious level of the human family, and replace racism and white supremacy with justice, so that we can live in peace on this planet that we affectionately call Earth. That was given to us by none other than Dr. Francis Cress Welsing.
The call-in number is 347-633-9644. Hit us up if you are trying to get in. I don't know if we're going to take calls for Dr. Welsing tonight, but the phone lines are going to be jam-packed. So if you call in and you want to ask a question, you definitely want to push to get yourself at the top of the call queue. But hit us up. We want to know what's on your mind.
In the spirit of our ancestors to whom shoulders we stand on, we'd like to say Ashe. And Ashe simply means so be it. And with that said, I want to stand on the shoulders and call down the spirit of a sister. That if I was living in that day and I seen her at Kroger's, I'd say, sis, what's good? Can I, can you pass some wisdom? Wally World, Walmart.
The farmer's market at least.
Right, the farmer's market. I want to call on the spirit of our good sister, Queen T. It was the queen of Egypt of the 18th dynasty, wife of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, mother of Akhenaten and grandmother of both Tutankhamun and Akhenaten.
Say that 3 times.
Right. She exerted enormous influence at the court in both her husband and son, and is known to have communicated directly with rulers of foreign nations. That reminds me of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. And it reminds me of a sister, her spirit. This sister I know named Mrs. ZaZa Ali. So with that said, we want to call on the spirit of Queen T. And we'd like to say Ashe.
Ashe, and I'm going to stand with you on that sister's shoulders, as well as all of the great mothers, the matriarchs of the ancient African civilization. A lot of people don't know and understand that the power was passed through the women in those ancient dynasties. So they try to minimize the sisters nowadays. Right. But that's a heck of a thing for your bloodline and your lineage to be most profound based on who your mother was.
Ain't that something?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is a very important lesson for us as women and as mothers today. Right. We got some serious work to do and some beautiful broad shoulders to stand on. So we stand on those that sister, Queen T, as well as all of the great prophetess, messengers, and guides who came to us in the persons of great women. We say Ashe.
Ashe. And to all those unknown soldiers that have fought, bled, and died for the freedom, liberation struggle of our people here in the wilderness of North America and throughout the black African diaspora. We'd like to say 3 times, Ashe, 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 Asheo. If you'd like to contact us, you can hit me up, Professor Griff. Tweet me at RealProfGriff. My email address is ProfessorGriffPE@gmail.com. You can text me at 678-557-2919.
You can hit me up on Facebook at ZaZa Ali. Our Facebook Enemy Minds page is NMEMINDZ Radio. That's also our Twitter handle. Our email address is minds, MINDZ, I see what you and the brother were talking about now when you talked about having to spell out everything, because I've done, 3 or 4 interviews this week, and our show, it's like every time you have to spell everything out. Not cool. Anyway, but you got to do what you got to do. So that's our email address. You can purchase Black Matters at www.blackmattersbook.com. And what else?
Nothing much. We got to get right to this call.
We got to get right into it.
Yeah.
Okay, you want me to get the sister on the line?
Can you get the sister on the line? I'll just kind of save the shout-outs for a little bit later on.
Okay.
All those that know. I'm going to say that again. All those that know. Everything for everyone and nothing for ourselves. You can dial it while I'm talking?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We need to understand these particular concepts. No big I and little you. Everything for everyone and nothing for ourselves. All right. We need to keep these particular things in mind, make them a part of our lives, and live by them. All right. And we need to understand that we're standing on the shoulders of all those that came before us, those that have left us proverbs and writing and all that. Is there something happened? You hit the microphone by accident? Something?
I did.
Are you good? You good?
Hello, can you hear me?
All right, now. I think we can hear you now.
Okay, I said I was just writing a song, and it's like, oh, tell me what's happening. It ain't democracy. it looks a lot like white supremacy.
I'm going to have to steal that one. Like, look, yo, Chuck, we need to write this with her. We need to put a beat to that one, for real.
Well, Dr. Welsing, it's an honor for us to have you on the show tonight. We've had a lot of listeners who have constantly requested that you be on the show. We quote your book every single show and most of the interviews that we do. And like Griff said, a lot of people tell us that we talk about racism, white supremacy too much. I've heard you speak on interviews, and people have questioned you about us complaining about racism, white supremacy, and that not being the real issue. Can you speak to, you've been doing this for over 40 years now. Can you speak to why it is important for us right now in 2015 as a people to focus on racism or white supremacy?
Well, maybe if I say something about how I got started talking about racism or really even thinking about it in depth. And when I started training in psychiatry as a resident in general psychiatry, I was at a government hospital in Washington, D.C., and there were black and white patients. But the training program, there might have been 2 black people, psychiatrists in training, and the staff was all white. And there was no discussion about the mental health of black people. What was actually said was that black people didn't have the intellectual potential to benefit from psychotherapy and that the best treatment for black people would be medication. Well, I'm a third-generation physician. My father's a physician. His father was a physician. So, of course, that didn't make sense. And I was, in my household, I have 2 sisters. My parents said, you're getting an education not to leave your community, but to gain knowledge and return and help your community. So I was wondering what was making black people mentally ill. And as psychiatrists, you take a history, detailed history on patients in terms of what has happened to them in their lives. And in all of the histories on the black patients, I saw the face of racism. And so I just thought I've got to understand more about racism than I do to date. I used to think when I was in college, I used to call myself a Marxist because Karl Marx tried to tie everything up in a system of capitalism. But you can have ideas when you are an undergrad, but when you are a physician and you're charged with helping people get well, you have to have understanding about, what is really happening. So I had discarded the Marxism, and I was looking for what else do I need to understand about racism. And to make a long story short, that's when I met Neely Fuller Jr., and he had started writing about racism during the Korean War. He said he was on a radar site in Japan and started thinking about the things that were being said. This is in 1954. Mm-hmm. And to make a long story really short, he came up with the idea that what was happening in the States was the result of a total system structure of racism, white supremacy.
Right.
That covered everything, covered all areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, and governed patterns of thought, speech, and action. So when I heard that, it was almost like a light bulb going on. I heard him, we were after a Black Power Committee meeting, and people like Stokely Carmichael, Chuck Stone, that was after the civil rights era, and a lot of people had come to Washington, D.C., and I was here in Washington. Right. And so we had a Black Power Committee meeting, and after the meeting, a lot of people were at somebody's apartment eating African food, right. Sitting around on the floor talking, etc. And so I heard this man on the other side of the room say racism is a system. Now, I was a psychiatrist in training looking for what's making black people mentally ill and finding that I needed to understand more about racism. And so, like they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah, right.
So there was Neely Fuller. He wasn't a psychiatrist. He was a guard at the Bureau of Engraving where they print the money. But he had written a huge manuscript on his concept of racism as a total system dynamic for maintaining the power equation of white power over a relative non-white powerlessness.
Right.
And so myself and another physician who was training to be an orthopedic surgeon, he was so impressed. His name is Carl Hutchison. He's now deceased. But he was so impressed with Neely Fuller's work because we used to sit in my apartment and talk about these ideas like till 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, when I was at age that you could do that.
Right.
Talking and debating and talking and debating and talking and debating. So Carl Hutchinson said, I will type his manuscript. Now, Neely Fuller had he has a fabulous print style, but he had 1,500 pages, 1,300 pages of printing on notebook paper, the 3-ring notebooks that you had in grade school.
Mm-hmm.
And fantastically printed. But Carl said, I'm going to type it between surgical cases. He was so impressed. So the three of us, so from that point I said, his work has got to be published. If somebody had said you're going to work with some black man 17 years to get his work published, I would have said, I couldn't have believed it, but right. I was determined that his work needed to be published. And so it took 17 years, like up and down disappointments, all kinds of things, but I was determined his work should be published. And people can get his book, producingjustice.com, on the internet. But anyway, that was, where the concept of a total system, and see, a lot of people don't understand system. We have all these complaints. I mean, just take black people. For 500 years, we've been complaining about being mistreated, from formal slavery forward by people who classify themselves as white. Well, in science, it's like you can't just complain, oh, I'm hurt, I'm upset, I'm being killed, I'm being evicted, whatever the complaint. At some point, you have to say, why is this happening? You see, what is the causation? And little baby children know that, when they start talking and then they start asking why, and to the point that adults sometimes get annoyed. But the child is seeking cause and effect so that the brain can begin to really think about what's going on in the environment, understanding the environment. Mm-hmm. So that's where I started thinking about racism. And even though Mr. Fuller had, said it's a system for maintaining the power equation, white power over a relative non-white powerlessness, I'm a psychiatrist in training, so I said, but why? You see, why would such a system be set up on this particular planet, third planet from the sun? And so I started thinking about things that, if you stay in school long enough, you're going to be exposed to a lot of information. And so I just started thinking about the kinds of things that were said in the system, such as black people are genetically inferior to white people, that people of color are minorities. And I said, wait a minute, this is not, these are not the white people's actual facts. That if you read, if you look at TV, you think that white people dominate the planet. White people are fewer than 1/10 of the people on the planet.
Right.
And instead of their being genetically superior, they are genetic mutations from black people. You see, instead of white being superior, white skin is a genetic mutation, not by Cress Welsing science. This is the science of genetics. Although the white people didn't apply this to themselves, but they applied it to if you had a white bunny rabbit or a white mouse or a white tiger or a white zebra, where they didn't have the normal color.
Mm-hmm.
The color was washed out, so to speak.
Right.
And that mutation is a genetic recessive trait, the ability to produce skin pigmentation. Not only it is norm for the human family, Hueman family, it is a genetically dominant trait. And so when you mix the genetic dominant black plus white, you get Barack Obama. See, if people don't understand, fortunately we have the president whose mother was white and whose father was black, a man from Kenya. And so black is a genetic dominant. Whenever you mix a genetic dominant with a recessive, you're going to get a dominant. And so it would be no way that he was going to come out other than a colored person.
Right.
And so that clicked in for me. I thought, this is what racism is about. Because white people are a tiny minority on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
They're genetic recessive. And so if everybody did what Dr. Martin Luther King and his brilliance, he was a brilliant, shall we say, social scientist.
Mm-hmm.
He thought if everybody loved, if people could just love, right? But if everybody on the planet just, didn't think about skin color, and everybody just, related to other human beings, people of color relating to white, white people relating to people of color, white people would disappear.
Right.
Exactly, right.
Because they are genetic recessive and a tiny minority. And so at that point, that's when I wrote the Cress theory of color confrontation. Cress is my maiden name. And so I said, I've got it. This is it. Unless they control the people of color, then white would disappear. So my thesis is that this is why, this is not only why the people of color have to be dominated, but they have to be dominated according to something that we all learn as people of color. Doesn't matter whether you're in Europe or in Asia or in Africa. If you've been exposed to white supremacy, if you're black, get back. Brown, stick around. Yellow, mellow. White, right.
That's right.
Because black, the highest level of black, is the greatest threat to white genetic annihilation. You see, so if people read, and I recommend that they do, everybody, every black person, every white person should read, for that matter, the book called Breaking Rank.
Right.
Which was written by the retired Norm Stamper. Have you read that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, so Norm Stamper has an entire chapter devoted to white police officers' attitude towards black men. A chapter devoted to that.
Right.
And he says the bigger they are, the darker they are, the more they're hounded by the police. And and my definition of racism is that it is a system structured and maintained by people who classify themselves as white, whether consciously or subconsciously determined. See, in other words, our brains function. There's material that is in our conscious. If we don't like to think about some things in reality, the information can slip into the subconscious. And so my definition is racism, white supremacy is the local and global power system and dynamic structured and maintained by persons who classify themselves as white, whether consciously or subconsciously determined, which consists of patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response as conducted simultaneously in all areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, for the ultimate purpose of white genetic survival and to prevent white genetic annihilation on planet Earth, a planet upon which the vast and overwhelming majority of people are classified as non-white, meaning black, brown, red, and yellow, by white-skinned people, and all of the non-white people are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration compared to the genetic recessive white-skinned people. So I say that if we are sincere in terms of solving the problem, then, we have to function with an analysis of what the problem is. We can't just keep complaining. You see that white people are doing this and white people are doing that, and they're shooting black men in the street. There's a specific reason why black men are under attack. Because it's only males who can impose sexual intercourse.
Right.
See, women can't impose sexual intercourse, so it looks like black women can get jobs and do this and do that and do the other thing compared to black men. But it's because the women are not perceived as a threat.
Right.
Because a woman can't get a weapon and force a man to have sexual relations. Because if she frightens him, he won't even be able to maintain an erection. So that's just basic physiology.
Right.
So I say that this is, I used to put ads in the paper. Does anybody have a better explanation for racism, white supremacy?
Did anybody respond?
No, of course. I said, I'll give $1,000 to anybody who has a better explanation. Not some just, I got an idea. No, an idea that fits the reality.
Right, exactly.
Let me ask you.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I read an article today about Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old young brother who was killed in Cleveland, Ohio, and they said that when they originally, a week after he was killed, that they charged him with 2 charges, one of them being, I believe it was aggravated assault. Are 12-year-old boys a threat? I mean, to be so malicious and so evil towards children, it's hard to comprehend that. Are young boys at that adolescent age a threat in the mind and the psyche of white people, white men in particular?
Well, do you see, it's like it's just open season on black men, and I maintain starting with President Obama.
Right.
See, the Congress, that is a huge majority of white males. But whether it's white males and females, they're saying it's open season. Do you see, you can discredit him every day, anything he attempts to do. You can even announce that your goal is to try to see that he fails. And you don't have to respect him. So the word is out, do you see, from the highest governing body,
right,
that it's open season on black men. Secret Service, you can have drones flying over the fence. You can let people go into the White House armed. Your Secret Service people can drive into barriers at the White House drunk. We don't need to protect this man.
Right.
He's a black man. Do you see? And that's what the expression, you don't want to get caught behind the 8 ball, is about.
Right.
See, all of the ball games, people look at ball games all the time, and they don't understand that the ball games are about racism. See, hopefully everybody will read my book, The ISIS Papers, The Keys to the Colors, where I talk about ball games as symbols. And out of the white brain computer, see, black people didn't create the ball games. It's not that they couldn't, but they were not, what should we say, not disturbed by balls, translate testicles. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just like our history where there was a period where, you know, just like black men are being shot today, there was a period in our history where black men were being lynched and castrated.
Right.
Where the genitals, the testicles were being attacked.
Right.
And the excuse then was that he looked at a white woman. He said something to a white woman. He looked like he wanted to think about saying something to a white woman. You see, which ties in the whole concept of genetic annihilation. Black man plus white woman would equal somebody colored. And so that's the whole fear. I mean, there's no history on the planet of black men attacking white men's testicles.
Right. Dr. Welsing.
Do you see? But there is all kind of history of white men attacking black men's genitals. Even now, you know, a lot of black men report when they're stopped by the police and they have them up against the car, spread eagle, and grabbing the black man's testicles. You see, presumably they're supposed to be looking for a weapon.
Right.
Well, when they say, you know, it's like, let's say, white police officer shoots a black man, and he gives the excuse, I thought he had a weapon. Well, he has a weapon. The weapon is his genetic material that can cause white annihilation.
Right.
You see, but that's a standard expression. I thought he had a weapon. And then the gun, if you looked at a schematic drawing of male genitalia where you see testicle, phallus, testicle. If you look at a lateral view, so you see phallus, testicle, you turn that around 90 degrees, that's a gun. Can you see the imagery? And the white calls the gun the great equalizer. Equal to what? In other words, in his brain computer, conscious and or subconscious, black man has weapon that can annihilate me. Must create weapon, can do same thing. And that's why white men will call each other son of a gun, because they're equating the gun with their genitals. Their genitals, you know, can produce recessive material that cannot annihilate black.
Right.
But the gun can destroy black, which is why there cannot be gun control in a system of racism, white supremacy.
Right. I guess this feeds into the NRA and the rest of them. But listen, the Cress theory of color confrontation. Back in the day, and I think I'm old enough to say that, when we was putting together Public Enemy, and we knew it was going to be short term. We planned it for 2 years. We used your work, the Cress theory of color confrontation, and we sent out 5,000 copies of your work with our album. And we wanted to let people know, because we produced an album called Fear of a Black Planet.
Right.
And we knew that there was we would get some kind of reaction, but we didn't realize the depth of what we was up against when we put that information out based on your work. That album was based on your work. The album Fear of a Black Planet, Public Enemy, was based on the Cress theory of color confrontation. We didn't realize that. And we had scientists and anthropologists and professors at colleges and universities coming to the concerts, wanted to challenge us. They wanted to challenge us in interviews, and where are you getting this information from? And we was pointing it back to you. So them kind of looked you up and said these Public Enemy guys are kind of setting some things in motion. But it was based on your work. Did anybody ever tell you this back in the day?
Well, I got calls. I got calls from Europe. I got calls from California asking me, how did I know Enemy? And I didn't know, I didn't know them.
Right.
And, but they were clearly disturbed because, see, the genetic facts are their facts. They just never applied it to themselves.
Right.
Oh, wow.
But the very idea that a concept that they might call a political concept was put on a beat, and I say that's partly why they've changed rap. You see, in other words, it's just like whatever is on in a rap message now with a beat that sticks in the brain computer.
Right.
And so, what if a political concept stuck in the brain computer? Like I'm saying, black people cannot have mental health if they do not understand the system of racism, white supremacy. See, because in other words, that little song that I was writing as I was waiting for the call, what did I say? Oh, tell me what's happening.
Right.
It ain't democracy. See, in black people, we greet each other by saying, hey, what's happening?
Right.
That is repeated a million billion times a day because it's like our brain computer is forcing that question. But we don't really pay attention. But it's because we were told that we were in a democracy. But that's not the reality that we experience. What we experience is racism, white supremacy, where black people have to be held back because of the fear of white genetic annihilation on the part of the people who classify themselves as white.
Right.
See, white people don't play around calling themselves Euro-Americans. They call themselves white.
Right.
So they stay on point. You see, in black people, we play around in African-American, Afro-American. See, because we don't understand what the game is.
Right.
We got a tennis racket at a football game.
Right. Whole different set of rules. So
You
Dr.
say what?
I said it's a whole different set of rules. You bring in a tennis racket to a football game, and they're playing by a whole different set of rules.
Exactly. A completely different game. And I say that, and this is Neely Fuller says, now, if you do not understand white supremacy racism, what it is and exactly how it works, everything else that you think you understand will only confuse you. See, you can have 25 PhDs and 10 MDs, but if you don't understand the reality, then you can't function effectively. And see, this is why the people who classify themselves as white, like let's say as television anchors or whatever, if somebody says, a black person says something about race or racism, they start panicking and screaming, you're playing the race card.
Right.
Meaning stop the discussion.
Right.
The whole deck is race. The whole deck is racism. But in other words, let's say if you sat down at a chess game and let's say maybe you don't know anything about the game.
Right.
And the person who's playing the white side of the board, that's the side that opens all the games. And they play offense, defense. The black side has to play defense, offense. And so the black side says, well, tell me how to play this game. If the white side of the board is insecure they may tell you some of the rules, but they don't tell you all the rules.
Right, exactly.
You see, so you cannot play effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so that basically, like, we have been given wrong information. Or as I was talking to one of my sisters, and we were talking about people who cook. And my sister was saying, people in Washington, if you ask them, you know, like you could be being entertained at somebody's house and the food is really very good, and you say, you got to give me the recipe for that.
Right.
So they give you some of the ingredients.
Right.
But they don't give you the key ingredients.
Right.
So you cannot duplicate.
Right, exactly. Dr. Welsing, we were having discussions, myself and ZaZa Ali, about what we wanted to ask you to talk about once you came to Atlanta this Saturday, dealing with the Divine Goddess Principle. So as we were putting it together, we never did send you the actual title that we wanted you to talk about. Well, we were kind of hesitant. I think we did, but we were kind of hesitant. And it came from your book, The ISIS Papers, the 9th chapter, which is the motherfucker in the original motherfucker. Now, we didn't want to put that on you because, I don't know, maybe it was me. I didn't want to be too forward to ask you to talk about something that, you know, if there's 400 or 500 people in the room, how would you go about getting that concept across to the people without people thinking we're being vulgar, especially seeing that on a flyer? Can you briefly explain the 9th chapter of your book, The ISIS Papers, the motherfucker, the original motherfucker?
You know, when I first gave that paper and first started talking about it, my mother was a Chicago public school teacher. She might have been retired at that point.
Right.
But she called me up one time and she said, Francis, I heard that you said that word in public. And I didn't know what my mother was talking about. I said, Mother, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, you know. And I said, no, Mother, I don't. I really don't know. What are you talking? And she said, Maryland farmers. I mean, my mother was not going to curse, right?
Right.
And I said, Ma, don't worry. It's a political expression.
Mm.
And see, I came to that understanding. See, once you understand racism, it's like understanding the power context in which everything is inside of that power context. It's like my grandmother used to say, like she used to make big puzzles, 1,000-piece puzzles, and she would have the pieces all spread out on the dining room table, and she would say, come on and help Granny make the puzzle. And we would say, oh, it's too many pieces, we can't. And my grandmother said, get all of the straight edge pieces. See, set the frame.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If you set the frame, then you can work out relatively, you know, with more ease. Where do the pieces fit? So she would say, get the straight edge pieces. So setting the context is what understanding racism, white supremacy, what it is. And so then everything, the language patterns and everything flow from the power context.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was coming out of my office one day at a clinic, and it's in a black community here in D.C., and I heard these young black people, they were passing by saying, the motherfucker, you know, this motherfucker. Everything was motherfucker. And so first I was stunned as an older person. I said, why do these children have to be talking like this? And then I thought, wait a minute. Any language that is used with high frequency has significance. We may not be able to see the significance. So that's where I started. I said, now what does this mean? And so then my brain computer just went to, there are 5 people categories in the system of racism, white supremacy. I mean, you know, maybe on another planet, if there are people like us, there's still 5 people categories. Man, woman, boy, girl, baby. If I said, here comes the man, you all, who would that be?
Historically, with black people, that would mean the white man, the cops.
The white man, right.
Right. Right.
Not
exactly.
a white man, the white man. That's an
Right.
isolating article.
Right.
So any other male would have 4 choices. Woman, boy, girl, baby. Black men fought historically. Don't call me no boy.
Right.
The system, there are black men who are in their graves because they were not going to be demeaned and insulted. So they insult President Obama by not calling him president, just calling him Obama. But anyway, so man is out, woman, girl, baby, boy. Boy is out. I say until recently, black men would not be a woman or a girl, but that's changing. But baby was in. Do you see? So it's a question, how many black women call the men that they're with baby? How many black men call the women they're with mama? How many black men call the place where they sleep a crib? So man who calls another man the man, calls himself baby, calls the woman he sleeps with mama, will call himself a motherfucker. See, it's just the brain computer. See, these computers that we think are fabulous are made by the human brain.
Right.
And so what does that term mean? Baby compared to man is powerless.
Right.
And so, that term, that would be like the password in the black community. MF. Translate powerless. Do you see? So people didn't want to face up to our powerlessness. It's just like people struggling with saying white supremacy now.
Right.
Do you see? In other words, if somebody has power and authority over you, they are in the supreme position.
Right.
And so you have to face that. I mean, it would be just like who won the chess championship, who won the tennis championship.
Right.
Do you see? Whoever wins, and if your team loses and you want to win, you can't go around saying the other team didn't win. You got the low score. You're going to go around saying, I'm the winner. No, you'll never be the winner because you are not dealing with reality.
Right.
So we have to deal. Go ahead.
Excuse me for interrupting you. You mentioned the feminization of the black man, for lack of a better word, and I know I get this question a lot. We get this question a lot. Black parents who, this society now is being inundated with homosexuality in the media and all of the images in television and radio. How do you talk to black children about seeing 2 men kiss, about seeing 2 men hold hands, about seeing 2 women walking down the street being intimate with one another? What is the appropriate age to start talking to your child about that, and what do you say?
Well, see, I say that the white collective, racism, white supremacy, is winding down. Do you see, consciously, subconsciously, people who classify themselves as white see their time running out.
Right.
Do you see, that doesn't, I mean, they could blow up the world in 20 minutes if they wanted to.
Right.
Do you see, but still they find themselves winding down. I mean, it's like white fertility all over the planet is on the decline. And so, I could go into it in detail, but it's like, see, if a group of people want to project their generations for the next 10,000, 100,000 years, they cannot male-male, female-female relationships on the same level as male-female. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
Male-male does not produce an offspring. Female-female does not produce an offspring.
Right.
So people who are consciously, subconsciously interested in their genetic survival and procreation through the millennium, they have to put male-female relations on the pedestal.
Mm.
But I say that the white population feels that they're almost like, and this is why they're just killing all over the planet. And this is why their children will come forth and, start shooting everybody in the school. This is subconscious, like we're on a death slide. And so what we do with our genitals, we used to say in training in psychiatry, tell me what you do with your genitals, I'll tell you what you think of yourself. Your genitals are the instrument that is sort of next to God, that you can produce your likeness.
Wow.
So if you are not in love with your likeness, do you see, then you don't want to reproduce it.
So does that...
And so I say in other words, white people teach their children racism, white supremacy. That's how you have a white supremacy system. Black people have to decide, what are we going to teach our children?
Right.
Do you see? Which is not to demean a person who might say they're gay, because it's like, how did they become that?
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, they have chemicals that can make males, fish or frogs, become female.
Right.
Now, if you were interested in running your system of white supremacy and you felt threatened by the black male's genetic material, would you turn him into a woman if you could? Get a McDonald's franchise and put the chemical in the, just as a thought.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Exactly. In other words, white survival by any means necessary. As a physician, we are having an epidemic of male effeminization. Do you see? And you can't even discuss it scientifically. Like even as physicians, it's a block on talking about it because somebody will say you're homophobic, as opposed to this is phenomenon that we see.
Right.
Where is it coming from? What is causing it? Is it the absence of fathers? In other words, we have a critical mass of males missing from the community because they've been incarcerated, killed, otherwise removed. So is that the influence?
Right.
Like I was talking to a male young man in my office yesterday, and he, like many black male persons, didn't grow up with a father in the home, right? And I just happened to ask him because he was depressed and he was talking about suicide. And I just happened to ask him how frequently is the idea that his father was absent on his mind. He said every minute of every day.
Wow.
See, this is, if you talk to male children, I would say that 99% of male children, young children, 7, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, upward, that their anger, it looks like, they're misbehaving in school, they may be angry, they may have an attitude. I would say that 98.7% is related to, where is my father? You see, because a mother can be ever so devoted, but she can't teach a male how to be a male.
Right,
exactly.
See, I've had a male child say, Dr. Welsing, I think I could do my homework if I just had an official father.
Wow.
You see, or a child say, these are young children, like 9 upwards.
Yeah.
If I had a father, he at least could have taught me what goes on under the hood of a car. I mean, these things are priceless, devastating statements. The psychiatrist wants to fall under the desk and start crying because of the anguish of the children.
Right.
And so it's not bad black men. It's the system that says, I'm going to destroy, just like they said about Obama, I'm going to try to make him fail.
So what does that do to black people that are torn between Democrat, Republican, when you have someone like Eric Holder going in and literally just outright saying that we should just forget about racism? That shouldn't even be a conversation on the table.
Well, no, we can't. That's not what we're going to do. If I have anything, no. Racism, white supremacy has to be front and center. And I say, we don't really have, as black people, we don't really have a political position. We have a position of hope. We hope the next election somebody is going to do something for us.
Right.
But we don't have a political position because we're not starting with an analysis. See, what I'm saying is, like, once you understand racism, then you have an analysis of the problem. Like I'm saying that, let's say Hillary Clinton, she certainly wants to be president. I say any candidate, any white candidate that comes to black people asking for a vote, that our demand, the first demand is that they acknowledge that we are in a system of racism, white supremacy.
Right.
See, because if you don't acknowledge that, then for sure you're not going to do anything that's going to be helpful to us. That's base. Hillary, you want our vote, then you're going to have to acknowledge that there is racism, white supremacy.
ZaZa, from a woman's perspective, how are you viewing the whole idea?
You say what?
I was asking ZaZa, from a woman's perspective, how does she view, as a mother, how does she view racism, white supremacy, and then how would she get these concepts over to her 11-year-old son? Because some of these concepts are actually deep. Would your son understand genetics and...
No, not at 11. But, Jawanza Kunjufu, in his book, Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, he talked about the fact that, and this is why, Dr. Welsing, I initially asked you the question about Tamir Rice at 12 years old, because he talked about how at the right around the third grade, when black boys start to feel themselves, start to get a little independence and get bigger, they're not small, little, and cute anymore with soft voices. Their voices start to get deeper. Teachers, particularly white teachers, start to see them as white women, start to see them as a threat.
Right.
So, this is why I asked the question, because for police officers who are trained, they're trained to kill if they feel threatened.
Right.
How could you feel threatened by my son's 11.
No, see, you have, in other words, please understand what I'm saying about racism. Their whole entire culture is built on the fear of their genetic annihilation.
Right.
That's what a system of racism means.
Right.
The entire culture is built on this fear.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you see? And so... yes. All you have to do is, let me just say this. I remember training in child psychiatry after finishing the residency in general psychiatry and did a fellowship in child psychiatry, and I remember being at a conference. There are 2 black child psychiatrists in training. Everybody else is white. and a white female psychiatrist was giving a case report. And she talked about this 8-year-old black male child. And she said, you know, an innocent child. And she said, I had to reach and hide my purse.
Wow.
That's,
you see, I mean, like a purse is a symbol, a female sex symbol.
Right.
You see, but think about the white teachers who have lured non-white male children into sexual activity. See, so it's like, I think that black people, in other words, black people should be talking about racism, white supremacy in their homes 24/7. And I'm not talking about hating white people. In other words, children who end up being chess champions, if you look in their history, some of their parents played chess, right? And they're talking about chess all the time. Or people who turn out to be musicians. Somebody's playing music all the time. Talking about music, uncle who is a musician or something like that.
right.
They are constantly exposed. See, 3-year-old white children know about racism. And Anderson Cooper on CNN, when he had those young children, you know, he's supposed to be doing a program about when do children learn about race. And he had 3-year-old white children, and you show them a strip of faces, different colors, but they're all the same face, and ask them which one is bad. A 3-year-old white child immediately points to black.
Right.
Which one is ugly? Immediately. Which one do you not want to be friends with? Immediately points to black.
Yeah.
And the black child, if you say which one is ugly, which one is bad, the black child, slightly older, points to black. Because the children are imbibing the culture. I say from the time every person wakes up in the morning, you turn on the TV, you think you want to get the news and the temperature, the weather. You're getting your first dose, your daily dose of white supremacy. Because you're saying white, image, white, black man bucking his eyes in a commercial, white. See, there are no overweight white women in commercials or in the news, but they will have overweight black people.
Right.
That's a way of saying nigger.
Wow. I can hear some people out there now listening, audience thinking, how does overweight white women on commercials equate to nigger?
No, see, in other words, what is the white standard image? See, all the white people are stick thin.
Right.
That's the shape they say people are supposed to be in.
Right.
Obesity is supposed to be a health problem.
Wow.
Black people are supposed to be poor, and so they can't so-called afford food. But look at them. See, the TV, that's what Empire is about. See, I say Empire is teaching white supremacy. People will say, well, white people look at it. They are looking at it and saying, this is Planet of the Apes. They're looking at Scandal. See, they're coming up with a new television series called Jane the Virgin. A young, white-looking Hispanic. She's the virgin. Scandal is the hoe.
Wow.
See, we don't know what we're looking at because we don't understand the system. But if you understand the system, then the images that are constantly coming at us in the media are carrying the message. It's just like when the Congress disrespects President Obama. they're carrying the message loud and clear to the police officers. Kill them anytime you want.
Mm. Wow.
See, so it really is, I say, just a matter of black people. If you're at the chess game, you learn chess.
Right.
And you master playing chess. It's just like, let black men play basketball, football. They master playing basketball, football.
Right. So
fortunate. I say we are at a fortunate point in time where we do have available. We have available the work of Neely Fuller, who's written almost like a chess manual about these are the behaviors that are practiced under racism, white supremacy.
Right.
These are the words and language that is used. These are the words that you don't use because when you use them, you uphold the system, etc. So information is available to us now that we didn't have 50 years ago. Do you see? I mean, it's like, but we were still hoping and thinking that certainly after the civil rights struggle, that the white people were going to shift.
Right.
People thought after the election of the president that we were post-racial. But what did the white people do? They armed themselves to the teeth and called it the Obama effect.
Wow. Yep.
Dr. Welsing, let me ask you something. I'm looking at a picture right now of a line of black women in San Francisco recently protesting, and they have their shirts off, and they are holding signs that say "Justice for Yvette." This is a sister who was murdered by the police recently in California.
Wait a minute, that's breaking up. I didn't hear it.
I said I'm looking at a picture of a line of black women in San Francisco, California. They are protesting a recent killing. A sister named Yvette was killed by the police. These sisters are speaking out, and they don't have their shirts on.
You mean their breasts are exposed?
Yes, ma'am. Their breasts are exposed. Would you agree with this method of protesting?
No, that would not be my recommendation. I mean, recently some Russian women did something like that, or some people in some European countries, some women protesting something. That wouldn't be my recommendation. Do you see? But at the same time, when Patrice Lumumba was killed in the Congo, that was how the African women expressed their
shame,
their grief.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I remember I was in medical school at the time, and I was trying to get my classmates interested in what had happened to Patrice Lumumba. So one of my classmates, who interestingly is a physician in San Francisco now, he said, "Well, Francis, why don't you walk down the hall with your blouse off? Why don't you go ahead and do what the Congolese women are doing?" So, maybe this is what the women had in mind. But see, I don't think that we need to. What shall I say? Be shocking. What I would just like us to be is calm and cool, but every black person is talking about racism, white supremacy.
Right.
You see, it's like Joshua fits the battle of Jericho, and trumpets begin to sound. If black people got on the same note, that would be transformative. You see, even if we just had a critical mass of black people who were understanding racism, white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they're not talking about hate white people. They're just talking about, in other words, we cannot have respect for ourselves as black people if we don't address what has been happening to us for the last 500 years.
Right.
We can't love ourselves and value ourselves unless we address at the deepest level possible what is happening.
Mm.
But you see, all of our major organizations, what the people who classify themselves as white strategically do is that they put the dominant amount of funding into those organizations. And those organizations are saying to black people, don't talk about racism.
Wow.
Hmm. So
but that's the key. That is the key. That's the trump card.
Right. I've heard you speak recently in many interviews, actually, talking about protesting and marching and basically persuading our people that that's not the, that's not the course that we should be taking right now. Some of our people feel like marching and protesting, in regards to the killings, is really the only thing that we can do. What do you say to that?
No, what I've been saying recently is that, see, in other words, what I foresee is that the white people want black people to get out in the street and protest. And either the people on their own or some provocateur will start violence.
Mm.
And then they will round the black people up and put the black people in concentration camps.
Wow.
Do you see? So they're trying to provoke. I mean, they're already doing gentrification, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the goal is to remove black people from the urban centers. And so instead of giving them the opportunity to do that, I'm saying, since the majority of people who classify themselves as white say they're not racist, well, if you're not racist, then you get out and stop the ones who are.
Mm.
The black people are going to stay in their houses.
Wow.
Because the police are set up to arrest black people. And under the Patriot Act, they can do anything.
Right.
So the black people are going to stay in their houses and throw the challenge to white people. If you're not racist, then you stop the ones who are.
Right.
Now, people will say, well, Dr. Welsing, they're not going to be out there. I don't know that. See, I don't know what they will show. But if they are not out there, instead of black people thinking, like there's radio discussion here in Washington today, to see whether they were talking about on the Black Talk Radio, do we need white allies? And people were, well, we can't do it by ourselves, and we need white people to help us. Well, what I suggested is we'll test the white people.
Mm.
Led by Hillary Clinton.
Mm.
See, you want the black vote? Then lead, if you're not racist, lead the march.
Right, exactly.
Lead the march. If you are not interested in lead the march, then it's a big wake-up call to black people.
Right, exactly.
See, in other words, this deal has already gone down in Nazi Germany. See, Adolf Hitler said that the Semites of the Jewish religion were going to be killed because they were not white.
Mm.
Hitler wrote that. He said he didn't care about their religion. They're not white. He wanted your white and pure.
Right.
So all the people who were, whether they were gypsies, whether they were mixed-race black people from the black soldiers and German women, all those people had to go into the oven, so to speak.
Right, exactly.
And so the German people have been writing ever since about, I didn't know. Hitler's secretary said she didn't know what was going on. Come on. Do you see what I'm saying? But no, the German people just stood by and let it happen. Well, if the white people in this part, in America, so-called, don't want to play German again, then get out and stop the white supremacy.
Right, exactly.
And see, if black people lay that out as the white challenge, but at the same time are prepared for the white people not doing anything. But see, black people, if the non-white people on the planet, who are 9/10 majority, if no non-white people fought each other, white supremacy would be dead the next day.
Right.
See, it necessitates being able to start, have one group of black people in Africa fighting another group. Have the Crips fight the Bloods. So a minority controls the majority by dividing and conquering.
Right, exactly. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing is our guest tonight here on NMEMINDZ Radio with Professor Griff and ZaZa Ali. Dr. Welsing, do you have time to take a couple of questions from our listening audience?
Sure.
Okay. And we always give a disclaimer and let the people know that there will be no disrespect, no debating, no long dissertations and that kind of thing, because we don't do that here on this show. That's the other show down the dial. All right, this is NMEMINDZ Radio. Be respectful to our guests and, of course, to the hosts, ZaZa Ali and Professor Griff. Please, a question, comment for our guest, Dr. Welsing, the author of the ISIS Papers, the Keys to the Colors. Caller calling from the 732 area code. What's your name and where you're calling from? Caller from the 732, you just listening? There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Caller from the 404 area code. What's your name and where you're calling from? All right. Too much going on. He got dogs. He got the ice cream man pulling up. He got caller from the 708 area code. Caller from the 708 area code. What's your name and where you calling from?
Hey, this is Brother Shahid. Peace, Brother Griff. And peace and blessings to Sister Francis Cress Welsing.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening to you. It's a pleasure to hear you talk. My question is, what do you think as a whole about the black leaders of the society today? Do you think they're just a bunch of sellouts for a paycheck, or do you really think there's anybody out there that can actually put some sense in the black culture or the black race as a whole? Or do you think they're just some hand-picked Negroes just shucking and jiving? What's your take on that?
No, I say every black person has to consider him or herself as a leader.
Right.
And you cover the ground where your feet are. Because your head is above your feet.
How can you reach the women, though? Because they need more sisters like you. When I say sisters like you, I mean, if you would it's sad when you hear and you see some of the actions and what's being portrayed out of the mouth of some of our sisters or my young sisters. Some of them speak consciousness, but that's just a small minority. We need more people like you that can touch the sisterhood, because when you look for a strong sister to be an icon for the younger sisters to look up to, that's rare. I mean, it's almost extinct, and you kind of ask yourself, man, after these next generations, I don't know what's going to go on with black people. I mean, are we just going to die out, or is,
See, I say we have to have a revolution in terms of our understanding of black self-respect. See, the system of racism, white supremacy has done every conceivable thing to annihilate our collective male and female self-respect. See, they pay millions of dollars for entertainers to use language like nigger and gangster and thug and freak and bitches and hoes. See, they pay for that because, like in the civil rights era, if you look at those black people when they were marching up against those water hoses and police dogs and billy clubs and being killed and everything, and look at the dignity and the self-respect. They had to have self-respect atop which was courage in order to do that.
Right.
And so the system said, wow, look at these people. They've changed this country. We have got to stop that. And so right on the end of that came the black exploitation films and the Superfly, and black people were just thinking, well, we're movie stars now. We're making money. But what they had the people do, the behavior, the drugs, the shooting, the killing, the name-calling, the men and women fighting, all that kind of stuff. So then they follow that up with niggers and bitches and hoes and gangsters and thugs. So they have taken our self-respect, even though we didn't realize it, down into the gutter.
Right.
And so we have to, it's just like looking at the blackboard and analyzing the plays that are being made and saying, now, wow, we didn't understand that was what was happening.
Right.
But now we are going to get back on track, and we are going to recover our self-respect, and we are going to be the people that the creative force in the universe. We're the mothers and fathers of everybody on the planet, including white people. Black people are the only people, and crystal black people are the only people that can produce all of the colors.
Right.
See, we really should be worshiping crystal black.
That's
like
right.
I have a T-shirt that says, all the colors are fine, but most black is most beautiful. See, if we ever internalize that, most black is most beautiful, then we will realize, finally, we will begin to understand what melanin is all about and what it can do as a superior absorber of energy, which is why somebody like George Washington Carver, who is crystal black, and he could go out and the plants, he said, would speak to him, meaning that the pigment, black is a superior absorber of energy frequencies. So he could go out amongst the plants and they would tell him what they could do. See, it's just energy. It's just an energy receptor, just like our ears, our eyes. They pick up certain frequencies of energy. And so just like we see, we're decoding energy.
Right.
Certain patterns of energy, we call that seeing, or we call it hearing. Carver could get the communications from plants. And so we are blessed with this gift of pigment, but white supremacy has told us it's ugly. But what do they do in the summer?
Right.
They try to get as dark as they can.
Exactly.
And then if they don't want to get dark now because of the skin cancer, they start putting tattoos all over themselves.
Wow. Wow.
You see, so everybody has to think of themselves as a leader.
Right.
In the African proverb that says, each one teach one. And we have to envision that we have an underground, overground railroad. We just have to know the direction that we're moving. In other words, I talk about racism, white supremacy in the direction of Neely Fuller. So we are going to transform a system of injustice with a system of justice. Justice meaning nobody is mistreated. Nobody is allowed to be mistreated. And those who need the most help get the most help.
Right.
You see, and Neely Fuller has laid out some basic behaviors that they are very simple, but they are transformative. See, we're trying to recover from our self-respect being smashed. Because if self-respect is more powerful than a nuclear weapon. See, it's like, like let's say a car falls on a baby, and the mother says, I'm going to get this car off of my baby, and she lifts the car up.
Right.
See, how did she do it? She won't even know how she did it. But
exactly.
Her respect for herself, respect for the baby. I'm lifting this car up.
Yep. So, Dr. Welsing.
I mean, somebody like Michael Jordan could fly. How can he do it?
Yeah, there's a brother out there. They call him, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, they call him the air up there. And he plays for the
really?
Yeah, they call him the air up there simply because he can do a 720. That's 2 360s in the air. And they call him the air up there. But anyway, Dr. Neely Fuller's book is the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, action for victims of racism and white supremacy. Neely Fuller Jr. How's he doing, Dr. Welsing? Is he doing okay?
Neely is fine.
Okay,
Neely is
I
fine.
had a number on him. I called him several times, and I wasn't able to reach him. I definitely would like to talk to him. Maybe I could just track his number down some kind of way in the near and distant future so we can have him on. Want to take a couple of more callers?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, let me go through the behaviors that Neely Fuller. Oh, well.
Okay,
go ahead with the caller.
No, go on. That call was kind of loud.
I was going to say that the behaviors that I was saying were simple. I got off track. Stop name-calling one another.
Mm-hmm.
Stop gossiping about one another. Stop squabbling with one another. Stop cursing one another. Stop snitching on one another for reasons of personal gain.
Right.
Stop being discourteous to one another. Stop being disrespectful to one another. Stop stealing from one another. Stop robbing one another. Stop fighting one another. Stop killing one another. And I add to that list, stop using and selling drugs to one another. Stop black children from thinking that as children they can be adequate mothers and fathers. Stop throwing down trash where black people live, work, and play. Stop believing in welfare, believe in prosperity. Stop pretending that racism, white supremacy does not exist. And stop allowing racism, white supremacy dividing black, brown, red, and yellow people. Now, those behaviors are very simple, but as I was explaining to somebody yesterday, that if it's a group of 10 people who get together and they gossip, if one person doesn't gossip, they receive information but they never pass it. That person is changing that group. See, without saying, how come you were gossiping? One person breaks the chain. Do you see? And it's like if black people didn't kill each other,
right,
that would be transforming racism, white supremacy. See, black people are not kind of blindly just striking out and killing each other. Racism, white supremacy is 24/7 stress on black people.
Right.
Unemployment as a dimension of racism, white supremacy for black men. That is a hell of a stress.
Right.
See, you can't function as a husband and a father if you're not employed, if you don't have income.
Right.
That's a function, and the system says, I'm going to interfere with that. And I'm going to bring drugs and guns to your community, and then I'm going to write laws so that I can incarcerate you for long periods of time. And I really am controlling the reproduction of your race.
Wow.
You see, in other words, that's what a system is. It's just like if you go to a Ford factory, and you just go to the different departments, all of the departments are integrated to turn out Ford automobiles.
Right, exactly.
Do you see? They don't turn out refrigerators. The Ford automobiles keep rolling off the assembly line. Right. Because the whole factory, all the different departments, coordinated, integrated to turn out that particular product. Racism, white supremacy is every activity is regulated for white genetic survival. Right. And ultimately that means black genocide.
Yeah.
See, if somebody's genetic power threatens you, then what do? You destroy their genetic power. Or you make it, non-operational. Right, turn the men into women. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so if we begin to, it's like, as a child psychiatrist, you would be playing games like checkers with kids. Is some little 8-year-old will say, Dr. Welsing, I've got you covered. You can't make any move. Somebody 8 talking. They just mastered the game. And so you're the grown-up, but they can beat you at checkers. And so this is what black people have to, we didn't understand. You are playing racism, white supremacy. Now watch us counter. We're going to use our self-respect to master what this system is all about. Right. And we're going to counter-move. We're going to counter-move racism, white supremacy. Right. And we're all going to try to get on the same note and the same page. See, we know how to clap in rhythm. We know how to dance in rhythm.
Right.
Now we have to start speaking in rhythm.
Right.
See, it's really beautiful sometimes seeing black people dance, seeing everybody line dance or looking at Africans when they dance. Everybody is flowing on the same beat. And this is what we have to, take ourselves to the next level of our struggle, mastering something we simply didn't understand in depth before. Now we're able to understand and use our self-respect as motivation. In other words, the creative force of the universe made black people the first people and the mothers and fathers of everybody. The first mathematicians, the first astronomers, the first everything, architects, engineers. And so we have been taken to the lowest depths by the system of racism, white supremacy, and it's just a question of saying, now watch us.
Right.
See, we're not spending any time hating white people. But we are going to have such high levels of respect for ourselves that people dare not mess with us.
Right, exactly. All right, we have another caller on the line waiting. Caller from the 678 area code. What's your name and where you calling from?
Hi, my name is Georgianne Thomas. I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia. And first, I feel such an honor to be on the same phone with you. I'm almost going to be in tears in just a minute. And one of the reasons why I was able to find you is because Professor Griff came to my class at Clark Atlanta University, and I've been looking for him for about 2 years. And I found him, and I found that you were going to be on, and I have enjoyed every bit, every second, every word that has come out of your mouth. I'm so emotional about you being on the phone with me. And so as a teacher at Clark Atlanta University, where I'm off this semester, but as a professor, I'd just like to know what you can do to help us with the students who are coming in who it's like pulling teeth to try to get them to understand what it means to be black and how wonderful it is that, i.e., let me just break this down. I am that person you're talking about. I did a movie, Professor Griff, since I saw you last, called Foot Soldiers, class of 1964. We won the Pan-African Film Fest Best Documentary for the movie. And I try to show the students this movie. I tell them what we did. I tell them how this white man jumped in front of me, put his cigarette out on my arm, and I still march with dignity. I try to get them to understand what the importance of being black. I explain the whole melanin theory. I show them the hidden colors 1, 2, and 3, and it's like pulling teeth. So one thing I want to say, because before I get cut off, I would like to send to you and Professor Griff a copy of the movie, or go to my website, www.footsoldiers1964.com, and see those of us who are still living. We're 73, 74, 75. We're still on the earth, and we have marched with dignity. But I'd like to know what you can tell me to help me with the students coming in from these all-white schools or from all-black schools that don't understand what it really means to have the label black.
Okay, sister.
Well, that's a very good question, and that is what people in many different situations are saying, that the young people don't understand. And I think instead of getting upset with them, that we have to sit back and think. See, we thought that the struggle was over with the passage of the civil rights laws. We thought that it was a civil rights struggle. All we had to do was change the laws. It's just like when we were in formal slavery. We thought if they would take off the chains, everything is going to be all right. Well, they took off the chains and slapped laws, the black codes on the book. And then we thought, well, if they change the laws, then everything is going to be okay. And if we get a black president, everything is going to be okay. So older people, and this is not everybody, but a significant percentage of us thought, well, the work is done. Now we are integrated. We didn't understand that when white people are fearful of genetic annihilation, they cannot allow integration. Do you see, other than some fluff at the surface?
Right, exactly.
Because if everybody just became the same and everybody was treated equally, white would disappear. So we didn't understand that. And so people thought, well, the work has been done. We're integrated. The children are in integrated schools. You see, but they come out of those integrated schools thinking they're white.
Right, exactly.
And not wanting to be black because they have been subjected to. I'm seeing children who were put in integrated schools from age 2. And they never were able to tell their parents how they were being mistreated.
Wow.
But they were being mistreated from age 2. And so how is that person going to come out?
Right.
But wanting even more deeply to be accepted as white.
Right.
So if we are gentle with the children, it's like, let me try to show you. Let me try to show you some pictures. Let me try to gently tell you some things about what our history has been. Don't feel bad because you don't know. It's our responsibility as older people. We didn't teach you. We didn't think you needed to know.
Right.
We thought everybody was going to be integrated and assimilated.
Right.
That didn't happen. And so we've come up to this point. And even they have, the schools are worse than they were 50 years ago.
Right, exactly.
But we are going to do our best patiently to help you understand. Like a child told me, a 10-year-old told me in my office, he was about 10 or 11, but he was a child who was having difficulty at home and at school, and so he went to this new school. And he was saying to me, I said, why do you like your new school? And he said, because if you do something wrong, the teacher has you come and sit in a chair in front of the class, and everybody tells you what they like about you.
Aww.
Can you see that?
Wow.
He said everybody, the whole class tells you the things that they like about you.
Wow.
And the little child said, you feel so good.
Wow.
It really helps you.
Right.
Do you see? So what if what if you started a class or a group and say, well, let's go around the room and let's everybody find something positive to say about each person.
Right.
Because we are wonderful. Everybody in the room was born a valuable human being, second to none. Do you see? But sometimes after babies are born and their parents are not in the best of circumstances or not having the best understanding, and so they don't get the message that they are valued second to none.
Right.
Do you see? But it's like if we set the task, well, let's see. Now let's see what has happened to the children. Now let's see what we're going to do. Because we are going to win this war.
Right, yes, we are. Dr. Welsing.
So I don't know, caller, I don't know if that's any help, something you might try, but it's like we have to use our creativity in our imagination. Like I've been saying, we went to the train station, and we got on the train headed for integration. And everybody was happy, and the train rolled down the track, and we found out we ended at Junction Genocide. So we had to get off the train and walk back to the station and get on the train Black Self-Respect Forever.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Welsing will be in Atlanta this Saturday, May 23rd, from 2 to 8 p.m. The Divine Goddess Principle, along with Marimba Ani and ZaZa Ali. And we're honoring the mothers of civilization with your host, Mr. Professor Griff. That's Saturday in the ATL at the Southwest Art Center, 915 New Hope Road, Atlanta, Georgia, starting at 2. We're going to start on time. There's no CPT stuff happening here. All right? So we're going to start on time. There's Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, keynote speaker, along with Marimba Ani, guest speaker, and Miss ZaZa Ali. We're going to be talking about the Divine Goddess Principle. We're going to honor the mothers of civilization. That day we're going to honor Dr. Joy DeGruy, Dr. Ava Muhammad, Amina Matthews, and we're going to honor Tanetta Muhammad in her recent passing. All right, so we'll see y'all this Saturday. We got time for a couple of more calls.
Well, can I ask a question, Dr. Welsing?
Yes.
I've always wanted to ask you this. Do you ever have you seen enough progress within our people in your lifetime, and do you ever get tired or discouraged feeling like our people are not moving fast enough with enough urgency?
I won't say that I get discouraged because I feel that I'm on my cosmic assignment. I mean, sometimes Neely Fuller and I laugh because it's like I met him in 1967, and it's like, we were thinking, oh, look, but in the next few years, everybody's going to understand racism.
Right.
So that was from 67 to now. And so it's just, well, it certainly took longer, much longer than we had in mind, but, you just keep doing what you feel you're supposed to be doing. So I'm not discouraged. I am determined. But in other words, are we looking at tragic situations? I mean, I look at what's going on in the world, in the Middle East and Africa, and all these bogus groups that they set up called ISIS and Boko Haram, and which I say are just constructions of racism, white supremacy, so that they can just go and cause devastation in retaking Africa.
Right.
Do you see? And so you set up these so-called terrorist groups to fight and kill people and cause chaos. in other words, this is very, you can say distressing, but all we have to do is be determined. Black people and people of color are the overwhelming majority of people on the planet,
right?
All of whom are under attack from racism, white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And so everybody, in other words, everybody stand their ground. Cover the ground where you stand with your self-respect and counter racism. Understanding what the problem is and being determined, well, with my lifespan, I'm going to cover the ground where I am.
Right.
Each one teach one.
That's a
see, now that we see it's like somebody training for the Olympics, or training for some big race. You just keep practicing and you just keep running and you keep working.
Yeah.
As Neely Fuller says, what better thing do you have to do?
Right.
Fight this war.
Right. Be black.
What more important thing do you have to do?
We're going to take one more.
See, so people should get inspired. It's like if they keep killing people, then it's going to be a black Thanksgiving and a black Christmas. Followed up, meaning black people won't be spending any money.
Right.
No money. You let another black man be killed.
I've been dying to ask this question, Dr. Welsing, but I didn't know if I wanted to venture off into that area. But Russell Simmons, how did you? I don't know. I felt very, very, very angry and frustrated at Russell Simmons with his Harriet Tubman sex tape. Talk about the funniest thing that he's ever seen, ever saw. And it just moved me in a way that so many people look up to Russell, especially in the hip-hop community and rap community, that look up to Russell. And for Russell to greenlight the Harriet Tubman sex tape is really, really, I don't know, it's really, really disturbing.
No, that was very shocking, but again, you see people who simply don't understand. People who don't understand. And so, in other words, you try to help people understand, but that was very, very, very sick and dastardly. But again, you see, I would say somebody that doesn't have any insight into racism, white supremacy.
Right.
And, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. We're going to take one last caller from Kansas City, from the 816 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Renee. Renee Betts. I'm calling from Kansas City, Missouri.
How you doing, sister?
Peace, Queen.
I'm good. Dr. Welsing, I spoke with you the other day, and again, it's an honor to speak with you. I wanted to ask, I wanted to kind of touch on the youth again and see what you think, because I was having another discussion, and there were some black people who feel like the youth are going to be better. They're not about all this quote-unquote racial stuff. That's what some people feel. They feel the white children or the other races are so accepting and all this kind of thing. To me, I don't believe that. I think that, kind of like looking back and researching the flower power and the movement in free love, and that, and most people went on to be the people in office now with racist policies. So I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that. Do you actually think the youth in general, racially, are more accepting, and that things will be more accepting going forward in the next, 20 or 30 years?
Wait a minute, I'm not hearing the word. Do I think that racism will be more what?
Things.
I just didn't hear your word clearly.
There'll be more racial harmony.
Oh, okay, racial harmony.
Yeah.
Well, do you see, what would you call racial harmony? See, in other words, if people who classify themselves as white, you got to look. See, I respect white people, meaning, in other words, they say they're white. They say that they do not want to be genetically annihilated. I've asked audiences of white people, all white people, do you want your children to be colored? Do you want your grandchildren to be colored? Do you want your great-grandchildren to be colored? Do you want your great-great-grandchildren to be colored? I'm polite and they're polite. What do they say? No. Meaning they don't want to be genetically annihilated.
Right.
This is where they are coming from. And it necessitates killing black men.
So do you think like I said, a lot of people feel the youth are not, they have more racial harmony, but young people who are coming into being teenagers now, and I'll say,
okay, well, did you know about but what about those students at the fraternity? Where was that, in Oklahoma?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
weren't those young people?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
See, black people, they're black people who want to fantasize. Right. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the system of white supremacy has done that is absolutely critical is they have given black people, from the time we were enslaved, the image of God as white.
Right.
And so that black people would be worshiping image of God and hoping that this God will love them. Now, that was a very cruel thing to do, but that is what was done to black people. Mm-hmm. And so black people are in hopes that people who classify themselves as white are going to love them as opposed to killing them. Right. You see, but one has to look at what do your eyes tell you and try to see that in itself is annihilating black self-respect. See, in other words, even Billy Graham said if there was a historic figure such as Jesus, he could not have been white. Mm-hmm. The Bible said he had hair like lamb's wool and feet the color of burnt bronze. Now, what if black people have been looking at that kind of image of so-called God's Son? We wouldn't be in the mental state that many of us are in. And it's not to be knocked, it's simply to be understood.
Right.
Do you see? So not wanting to talk about the thing that is harming you is a sign of mental illness.
Absolutely.
See, that's no different than a person loving somebody who is beating them and giving them black eyes. It means that the person who is allowing themselves to be beat somewhere along the line, tragically, their self-respect was destroyed.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for your call and for your question. I don't mean to cut you off. We're running out of time. Thank you again for listening. We have one more call that we want to get to. This brother's in the chat room telling me he has to talk to Dr. Welsing and how much you've meant to him. So we're going to bring him on the line really briefly, and then we are going to close out for the night. Brother Shakir, peace.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Peace. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so very much. Can you hear me, Dr. Cress Welsing?
Yes, I do.
First of all, ma'am, I want to say I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you with all that I am.
I love
you thank
too.
You. Yes, ma'am. My mother was here today. You were just like her. You are alpha female. My mother used to tell me all the time, if she can't use my comb, don't bring her home. And she was like, she used to drill that, but I was at Texas University, and I came in, and the hall monitor coming for football practice, he had a packet. He was crying at the table. I said, "What you crying for, brother?" He said, "It's this." He said, "Read this," and he gave me an article, the original motherfucker. I read that. I had white women all on my wall that the coach had passed out with beer, drinking beer. I ripped all the posters down. It was like I went through an exorcist. I ripped all the posters down. I read the Oedipus Rex. And like my grandfather said, I'm not going to ask you a whole lot of questions. I just want to say I love you, and that I sit down and I study everything you ever read. I sit down, I stop running like my grandfather said, sit down somewhere and stop running around like got a hot nail stuck in your ass and can't be still. Sit down and read and research and study. But I just love you. I love you. I love you to life, and that's all I wanted to say, sis.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's so sweet.
Right. That's the general
brother in the chat room said he usually sound all hard.
Right. Dr. Welsing, you done soften that brother up because that brother's normally hard. You can't use your comb, don't bring her home. All right. Any closing words, Dr. Welsing, because we have about 3 or 4 minutes left. Any closing words? We're looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. And any closing words?
Well, I would just close with this, and let me just close with a prayer I wrote. It's in the back of the ISIS papers, and it goes like this: Thou who art blacker than a trillion midnights, thou whose eyes shine brighter than a billion stars. Thou whose hair doth coil tighter than a million springs, radiating all energy throughout the universe, we beseech thee, one and only one, to give us total strength to carry out thy will for the universe, to establish justice and live in peace.
That's beautiful.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, let's give a round of applause for my teacher, the elder, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. And we will see you on Saturday, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, okay?
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed talking to you.
All right, thank you very much. You take care, all right?
Bye now. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, the author of the ISIS Papers, and we'll see her on Saturday at the Divine Goddess Principle. I'm going to be up in her hood towards the VA, the DMV area. I'll be in Fredericksburg, Virginia, at the behest of my good sister Vanessa Salazar Productions. June 18th, that's Thursday. From I think the doors open up 6, 7, something like that. I think it's 7 o'clock. But check this out. It's at Central Station, 1917 Prince Anne Street in Fredericksburg, Virginia. You got any closing words, Miss ZaZa Ali?
I'm so excited about Saturday. I'm so excited to share the stage with these sisters.
Give thanks, man.
I really, really, really am.
All right, shout out.
And when everybody sees the totality of the event that we put on, it sounds like 2 to 8 sounds like a long time, but it's going to be nonstop, moving, informative, touching. Ain't gonna be no sitting around at NMEMINDZ Radio events. We're gonna keep your blood, energy, and your emotions, and that God force in you flowing. It's going to be a beautiful event.
Yes.
We have some beautiful, beautiful celebrations for Joy DeGruy, Hanetta Muhammad, Ava Muhammad, and Sister Amina Matthews. So if you can't be in the building, shoot me an email to Minds Matter, BTRS. You can watch it live on pay-per-view. We got a brother who is going to have everything professional and done to a T, so you feel like you're there, hopefully. All right? But that's it. I
think we both can close on Shakir's words, man. If you ain't got a comb,
don't bring her home.
If you can't use your comb, don't bring her home.
Straight up.
Woo.
Real talk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. She made my year, man. Revolution is not an event. It's a process, all right? Loving one another is a revolutionary act, brothers and sisters. This is Professor Griff and ZaZa Ali. We signing out on NMEMINDZ Radio. Peace.
Peace and love, family.